Welcome to Just Minding My Business Radio, where we are moving at the speed of God, learning what we didn't know we didn't know. I'm your host, Ida Crawford.
And I'm your co-host, Ruth Haskins.
So grab a pen and paper and get ready for information that you can use.
Welcome to Just Minding My Business Media, LLC. We sincerely hope that you're doing well, staying well, and finding joy in life. Walt Disney is quoted to have said, "The way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing." Just Minding My Business Media is about the doing. Become known for your products or services on JMMB Radio Podcast, heard in over 200 countries. Or if you're ready to take the leap, move to Mindset Movers TV as a host or series producer, broadcasting to the combined audience of Roku and Fire TV. Let's move in the right directions together. Contact us at jmmbradio@gmail.com. Any change, even a change for the better, is always accompanied by drawbacks and discomforts. Arnold Bennett. Luke Arrigoni is a CEO at Arricor. He has worked with some of the top brands in the United States, building machine learning and data science programs, even before there was such a term. He worked with companies such as UPS, J&J, Getty, AT&T, Stryker, Goldman Sachs, CAA, Fox, Sephora, along with many others. In today's world, where many are not deeply tech savvy, Luke clarifies the impact of data on politics, machine learning, blockchain, and other ways technology intersects with our daily lives. Luke ignites interest and understanding by creating meaningful narratives, and that is why he is here today, to take us into this intriguing new paradigm of human technological developments. Welcome, Luke.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, welcome, welcome. Artificial intelligence. I just watched on 60 Minutes a couple of weeks ago where this guy was on TikTok, looked exactly like Tom Cruise. The whole expression, everything, but it wasn't him. I was floored. So talk to us about artificial intelligence and explain to us what it is.
Yeah, of course. All right. So when we think about artificial intelligence, oftentimes we think of like two camps. One is like sci-fi alien invasion level machines taking over the world, kind of Terminator sentience. And then the other one is, real deep science, AI, the kind of thinking around, like, oh, that's distant future kind of stuff. We'll never, ever get to it. But the reality is there's a third option that's far more practical, which is artificial intelligence today is really using data to solve problems, very, very focused problems. And so when you have lots of examples of the solution in your data, you can use artificial intelligence to kind of suss that out. And so broadly, we call lots of things artificial intelligence, but machine learning specifically is when we say, I have a million examples of when someone looked at one product and bought another. And that way it's kind of I have the answer, right? I can build a machine learning model that'll say every time someone looks at this product, they will eventually buy that one. And that's generally what it is. It's a focused one problem kind of thing.
Okay. So how is it changing the industry right now? How?
It's eating everything. There's when we think about how data is impacting at least our daily lives, right? If you are running an e-commerce store, even as a small business, you're trying to look at like recommendation algorithms, or let's say you work in a Fortune 50 company and you're trying to figure out, how the right time to hire or fire, right? Like there's all kinds of decisions. And now that we've been collecting data as a species, kind of full speed ahead for the last 20 years or so, we have a lot of this. And excuse me, I'm feeling a little under the weather today. And so really, when you think about how is it changing our business or how is it changing our world, really you have to think about, the data collection efforts. What does it mean for me to give my data to someone? What does it mean as me as a business owner to collect data? Should I be collecting data now for a future program that I'll build for data science? There's a lot of questions that have to do with strategy around, your own exposure to these algorithms. There's a kind of a plethora of areas you can go into depending on, who you want to represent, consumer or business owner.
Yes, it's definitely AI is definitely now. I've been starting to do a little bit of research on it because I'm a tech person. I've been in the IT business for over 25 years. And, when new things come out or, I'm starting to hear over and over in different places, certain technologies, I try to go out and take a look at it. And it's definitely powerful, very, very powerful, to say the least.
Yeah.
I look at it on both sides of the fence in terms of a positive thing for business owners, but I've also looked at how it can be exploited as well.
Absolutely.
Which is the scary side of it.
So what are the ethical implications of all of this?
Well, you brought up the Tom Cruise thing, right? There's something that we could talk about with like deep fakes, right? Deep fakes are, when we have a lot of pictures, a lot of data around a celebrity or someone, a lot of audio files around this person. Earlier you would have heard me call that the answer, right? The answer is this person and their and the words, the audio file, and the video, and how they move. And when you record all of that over a long period of time, you can develop these deep fakes. And so, I mean, when it comes to, the implications or the ethical questions around, when we look on something for an election, and we see, X politician or candidate to be said blank, definitely probably in this next election, even we will start to see deep fakes represent themselves for these candidates. And we'll have to determine, what is real and what is not real. Right? And how do we draw those boundaries? Like, for instance, here's a good gray zone, right? What if a candidate wrote something, let's say like they wrote it in college or something, they wrote it on a piece of paper or on a paper they turned in. And then later someone took that politician as they look today and said it in a speech, right? There's a gray zone. This is technically something that, I'll pick on Trump. We'll say Trump said this and wrote this in a paper 20 years ago. And then we have a video that I created with a deep fake where he's saying it in a speech today. There's this whole ethical gray line around it is technically his words, but there is definitely something more powerful and captivating about having contemporary politician version of him say it. And so you have to kind of draw lines around, well, what is okay? What is all right, for the ethical boundaries? And then of course, they'll just be completely falsehoods, right? Things that are said by some politicians, that we have to be mindful of in its entirety. It raises lots of questions around our own concepts around reality as well. How do we know that something is real, right? If it's no longer what we can see or what we can hear, if those cannot be trusted, what else do we trust?
Yes, that's a fact.
It's something that's going to be real, but it's also going to be sort of on that sci-fi field where you just don't know what to trust anymore because you're not sure what you're looking at or who you're hearing or what's going on. So that can have ramifications in so many, many ways. Like you use politics as an example. What are some of the positive ways in which it could be used?
So this, of course, is there's a wide open. I'm, of course, in this industry because I'm very bullish. I really think there's a lot of opportunity, right, for making positive change. And so that same technology I just brought up around creating deep fakes, that same tech will be eventually used one day to make a kind of Netflix where you sit down, you say, I want an action adventure with, this kind of lead. You could describe the lead and the personality of the lead. And then you can say, and I want it set in the future. And then you'd wait 20 minutes and then Netflix would just generate, a 3-hour movie for you. That is, I would call it the near future. That's not today. that's not in 10 years. It's somewhere between here and 10 years where we can sit down and use the same tech to create like an unlimited composition of entertainment, where the same music and the audio and the file and the characters and the video, it's all just generated. So like that's this incredible opportunity for storytelling, right? More practically today, though, we use data and data science, or we're calling it AI right now, but we collectively use this to solve difficult problems in industry that would otherwise be very tedious or very difficult for a human to sit down and solve. So, for instance, with Getty, the classification of certain images. If you want to know whether an image looks, fake, like staged, right? It's like 5 people kind of cheesy thumbs up staring into the camera. You could have a human go through all their 200 million images and say, this is a stock image, this is not, right? But using machine learning, you can build automatic models to develop those things to say, this looks like an authentic picture. And so that's a very practical problem that right now Getty is using to solve for using AI. So there's lots of ways that we use it today for good and productive, industrious ways. I think as a whole, the community just needs to maintain its mindfulness around how it can be abused and to avoid those areas and talk about them as well.
Yes.
Okay, so then can it be, this is going back to the negative side, how will AI or how can AI or how is AI impacting privacy?
So this is a good one, because there's less and less data that is needed to be able to find out more information about you. And I think this is made very clear by anyone that's used TikTok. People kind of joke and they call it the algorithm, right? Like, well, the algorithm knows. But the reality is, if we'll say 20 years ago, if that algorithm was a person and said, these are all of the things that you're interested in, we would think that that was just completely uncanny, that any human being could ever know that much information. It would require maybe like only our spouses would be able to tell us that level of fidelity about who we are. And now if you spend about 2 or 3 hours on TikTok, TikTok is going to hit a lot of areas that maybe only you and your spouse are like, oh, I am actually tangentially interested in, in coffee, right? Like I really am into espresso, right? But I don't talk to my friends about it, but the algorithm knew that I spent 2 extra seconds on that one coffee image, right? And so when it comes to privacy, we have to know that we are entering a world where even the morsels of data that you give to a company can be used to extract volumes of information about you. Like that old adage, a picture is worth 1,000 words. In many ways, your data is worth a lot more.
So now my next question would be, how do we protect ourselves?
See, this is, I think, the $1 million question. There's some practical stuff, right? Like, oftentimes there's opt-in type data tracking, cookie tracking, and most people kind of mindlessly say, hey, that's all right, I don't care. I would encourage people to not click on those. And I know that harms my industry because that's where I get funding, right, is through those programs. But to be practical here, those are the large sweeping collections. The second thing is something that's beyond one person, which is as a society, on a government level, on a legislature level, we should probably start thinking about what we can and can't do as companies and what we can and can't collect. Europe is pretty good about this, and they're pretty mindful about collecting. But in the United States, that's it's all is fair in love and war when it comes to data over here. Everything that can be collected will be. So I think that's something that I think we need to be more open about. I think it will become a hot button issue in the next 10 years in elections, where people are asking politicians, how do you feel about regulating X data collection? Or how do you feel about regulating the echo chambers that evolve inside of our discourse because people are only fed their own perspective in perpetuity?
Yes.
That can be a problem. So that actually, in a way, this AI can, I'm not going to use the word program, but it can mold our thinking in one way or the other.
I think program is not too strong of a word. In fact, there's kind of a little joke that we're all programming these things to program us. right? And there's a lot of truth in that, right? You may or may not have friends that have spent time on TikTok, and after spending time on TikTok, they have picked up new identities, right? They have like, oh, I didn't know I was into fishing. I'm a fisherman, right? And that's of course the extreme example, but there is definitely something to be said about the information that's shown to us, especially if it's done in a gradual way. That whole frog being boiled type situation where no one just starts serving you lots of coffee stuff and then suddenly they serve you fishing content. It's this like, oh, here's a fisherman drinking coffee, right? That slow kind of, oh, this is my world. This isn't a small jump from where I used to be. I think if you do that enough to most people, you can program them to be, not necessarily what you want them to be. I don't think there's any like mastermind trying to like control us with, puppet strings. I just don't think anyone is that smart or that clever. I just think it's a nature of the algorithm saying, oh, there's someone that's interested in this, and we need to keep diversifying the content so it keeps pushing people to either a deeper level of their own echo chamber or maybe even a sideways level to something different, like the coffee to fishing, to make that, just to kill that example.
Yes, and they're already doing it, because I know, like, if I online and I search a certain thing and then I jump on Facebook, and all of a sudden what I kind of been looking at pops up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like they're already doing it. I'm already aware of what's going on. And of course, I just X out of it because I didn't ask for it from there. When I want it, I'll go get it.
Absolutely, right? You gave a little morsel, right? And then, Facebook, they took a pound.
Yeah.
That's how they're all, that's how all companies are working right now.
Absolutely. They are. So I want to talk about the blockchain and the crypto.
Let's do it.
Yeah, because I'm investing, I'm still learning. So I'm just doing a little bit at a time, but let's talk about that.
Okay. So I hate using the word invested. I purchased Bitcoin basically during every hype cycle for the last 10 years. And I did it purely as a gamble, purely as this is funny, this isn't serious. And I sold when it peaked, and then I never got back in. I think the key for me has always been not to take any of that too seriously, that there actually really is no value associated with these coins, but that hasn't stopped me from making money from it, right? But I only made money as if, someone that buys a scratch off lottery ticket, not because I had some kind of super strategic methodology, right? It was like, oh, it looks like this is a big bubble. Maybe I'll join right now and sell before it pops. And I think that's a huge component that people see when they see blockchain, is that hype cycle where people join in. And then there's a second component to it, which is much more impactful for us as a species, which is decentralized agreements on what is truth, right? Almost going back to that whole, like the deep fakes, right? Like recorded video. Mm-hmm. If you had a video that you were taking of a politician and it was posting screenshots to a blockchain, we could all collectively agree that like this is the original, right? And that is where I think there's a lot of value. So while you will definitely make money throwing dollars into a couple of cryptos here and there, and maybe you'll lose, right? It's largely a gamble depending on how you want to see it. There isn't a gamble in the idea of distributed information and distributed computing. That actually has something substantial to it.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, because I just dibble and dabble. I'm like you. I mean, it's like I don't play lottery, but the buzz around me with the crypto space. I said, well, yes, just try it. I put a couple dollars in, watch it. Now it's kind of going down. And then I'm starting to hear more stuff on the news where the government is trying to regulate it, things like that, which lends me to believe that it's some big deal in it if the government wants to regulate it.
Yeah, I think governments are really in the business of money, right? Not to be political about it, but typically governments receive a lot of their power through the military and through their fiat currency, right? Both of those ways. And for most of us, our interaction with the government is not through the military, right? We don't, most of our interactions, at least in North America, our interactions are largely monetary, right? It's like where it's taxes or they are spending on projects which impact us, right? And if you can detach your day-to-day commerce from the fiat currency that government has, like they lose that power. So for them to regulate it makes sense. I mean, it is cutting them at the knees on an area that they need. And someone could make the case that that's good that governments keep that power, right? That allows them to finance, roads and things of that nature, right? Like blockchain isn't taking 10% out and building a road in front of my house, right? So there's a case to be made about both. I'm not going to try and make an anarchist case to say this is a good thing and all governments trying to tax it are bad, right? Like I'm not, but I do understand the fear. I do understand the regulation. But cryptocurrency is really cutting them at the knees.
Yes, because there's more and more talk on 60 Minutes and all of these different programs surrounding it. And then when you start to look at big business like Apple and all of these different companies that creating their own Bitcoin, so to speak, and the opportunity to be able to trade with it. I was watching a guy last night, 60 Minutes, and he was saying how he has a pizza shop and he takes Bitcoins for payment.
Yeah, and taxing that's difficult, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's a fascinating concept.
It really is. It really is. And people are buying houses with Bitcoins.
Mm-hmm. Now the houses, those will eventually have to be converted back to USD. I guess, maybe not. There's maybe some mechanism I'm not aware of, but at the end of the day, that money has to be accounted for somehow.
Yeah.
So if you don't convert it back to USD, you're still owing the IRS whatever the assessed value is, right, as a purchase price. But yeah, there are transactions that you never have to convert back to dollars for, like a pizza. I give you a piece of pizza, you give me Bitcoin, and then the person that made the pizza can just hold the Bitcoin and then go buy something else from someone else with that money, right? They never have to exchange it back into US fiat.
Yes. Yes. It's very interesting. Very, very interesting. How that came about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Our world is changing. Bottom line, our world is changing on many levels.
It is. Yeah.
And can we keep it all together? Or is there going to be a point where there's going to be a collision? Because there are so many new forces rising up to change not the United States, but the entire globe.
There's a concept I'm sure you're familiar with, or maybe not. It's called singularity, right? Where all these changes, and it's really meant to be specifically for machine learning and AI, but the idea that at some point, a single point in time, a machine will be so smart that it'll be able to just transform our current reality. So there's kind of a lower level to that, which is this Darwinian concept of there's telescoping changes in our evolution. So you have X number of years to get to the printing press and X number of years to get to electricity, and which is far less, and then X number of years to get to nuclear power, which is far less, and then X number of years to get to computing power, which is less, and then each major advancement has less time between it. It stands to reason that there will be a point in time where maybe every month there is a change as big as nuclear energy, electricity, and computing, and that might be upon us. Could be in the next few years. It could be in the next 20. It's hard to know, but that pattern has been holding strong for thousands of years.
Okay.
Always
so now the question again, it's the question that I have, and I'm sure many people would think of, is when will we get to the point when we outpace ourselves as humans because everything that we've accomplished over the period of history, or our history, we seem to be going forward because of the things that we create. But in many ways, as humans, not what we produce, but as humans, our humanity is sliding backwards. We're sort of like outstripping ourselves. And I think that's a concern that people have. I know I think about it, I see it. With all that we've accomplished, we haven't accomplished the basic human advancement that we should have by now. We're still going to war. We're still killing each other. People are still greedy. People are still homeless. There's poverty. You can just go on and on and on. And it's not getting better. It's getting worse. So the question becomes, what benefit in the long run will all this quote unquote advancement be for humanity, as well as the earth and the rest of the animal and plant creation? So it's just a real juxtaposition when you really pull back and look at it. It looks interesting and fascinating, but where is the human factor? Are we going to grow? Where is our ability to advance as humans, purely on a human level, improving our mental, emotional, spiritual, physical outlet? Because if we have machines doing everything for us, we can just basically, what's going to be for humans to do?
I have
And
I have
oddly
three.
enough, we won't even have to think for ourselves, because we're going to have someone doing that for us, telling us, you looked at this twice and you stayed here for 2 seconds. So now I know what you like. So now I'm going to feed you down that lane.
I have 3 kids, and the things you bring up are, of course, things I worry about and wonder. And I think for me, and this isn't necessarily to speak for what would work for everyone, but I advise my kids that the future is uncertain, and that there's reasons for that, and that how we change as a species, or how do we become more human, or trying to tether this back to ourselves, is going to be a challenge, one that their generation has to solve. And so I've been trying to prep my kids for this. And some of the things I tell them are, the future is uncertain, but math and art will most likely be major commodities. Those are going to be the things that people want. And those are the things that, if you're interested in one or the other, there's definitely going to be a need for it. The second is, the environment, right? And we talk about this accelerated pace, and everything I just brought up, from, nuclear energy to computing powers, all had a deleterious impact on the environment, right? So for me, my parents didn't talk to me about the environment as being changed, but for my kids, they are actually seeing a fall and a spring that is more condensed and more harsh than I ever had. It's easier to teach them about the environment because they are seeing a change. So for them, I try to tell them, like, this is our responsibility. This is what happened. The generations before made decisions, and it'll be your generation that has to clean it up. And I think as part of this, like, we'll call it the hard times, my kids' generation will hopefully make better rules. They will help carve out a better humanity. And right now, it's, it feels like my job is to help my kids make those rules, right? I don't know what the rules are going to be. I don't know what the solutions are going to look like, because it's so uncertain. But I know I want them to have compassion and empathy. I know that I want them to understand balance, right? Destroying the environment was actually not an ecological problem. It was a balance one, a fundamental concept in the universe, right? We did not balance how much we took versus how much we gave, right? So teaching my kids these kind of fundamental things is being important, and not just take, which might have been a mantra, especially in America, 20, 30 years ago, which was, that greed is good kind of joke that really wasn't so much of a joke at all. So I guess to answer your question, I don't really know what the answers are. I know that it'll be my kids' generation that has to find those answers. And right now I'm just trying to prep them as best as I possibly can, so that they can not only find the answers, but hopefully help everyone in their community at least be better versions of themselves.
And that's what I
Very fine.
do with my kid
Very
as well.
fine.
He's an artist. So,
Yep.
and he's been an artist since 8 years old. And I love that about him. You know, he's very, he creates. And like you said, you know, I've always taught him to be an asset to society, not a menace, you know, because, you know, that's all we can do. You know, we're at a place where, you know, we can't control what's going on, but the kids, they're going to take the baton at some point. So we have to prep them to be better than we were.
I agree. You said in a few words what took me like 5 minutes.
Wow. So if people want to get in contact with you, how do they do so?
You know, you can go to my site, Arricor.com, ARRICOR.com, or you can look me up on LinkedIn. There's not a lot of Luke Arrigonis. Just feel free to send me a message, or you could follow me if you'd like. I don't really post too much content, but you know, I'm always happy to make a connection. And if anyone's in the Seattle area, post-COVID, I'd love to take you out for coffee.
Yes. Now, you got so much going on: cybersecurity, economics. It's just so much. Cybersecurity, I'm kind of like really passionate about that because of being in the IT business. You know, I've already seen my company lose money because somebody clicked on something, or somebody was getting spoofed by the CEO of the company in an email, and oh, that's the CEO, let me respond.
Yep.
You know, so talk a little bit about cybersecurity.
Yeah. So ransomware is kind of the black eye in corporate America right now, which is the best solution for ransomware is unfortunately to pay for it. And that's kind of a horrible way to think about it. I know as an identity, as a country, we like to think about, you know, the cowboy breaking down the door and like getting the bad guys and taking them back to the jail. And that's not the case with ransomware. With ransomware, if you've clicked on something or one of your employees have clicked on something and it starts to just, you know, rampantly encrypt all of your private data and you don't have backups or the backups are compromised too, you are in a dicey spot. You can't break encryption. That's a math problem, which no one has been able to solve. That's why it's there, right? And you're kind of left with maybe out of the goodness of their heart, they'll just decrypt, which has never ever been seen. So now you're just left with, I think it's time to pay, and you just have to negotiate. That's a real hard pill to swallow, right? So that's probably one of the biggest issues, right? Is that we have this problem that's so big, and the best solution is to let them walk all over us. And so there's a lot of preventative measures, right? Where people say, don't click on the thing, right? You mentioned the spoofing, right? Don't send out, you know, those passwords. And yeah, that's that you actually mentioned those are the biggest ones, right? Spoofing and ransomware, those are wrecking a lot of it. There's some kind of like ancillary things we talk about, you know, encryption as part of something that will be probably litigated soon and controlled. But realistically, those aren't things that people have to worry about today.
Yeah, but it's like a beast because every so often on my company we with this company know before you I forget the name of the company, but we have to go through this training, and they talk about all the different types of ways that people can access your data and your information. And it's, you know, things to look for in terms of the time, is there spelling, misspelling, because normally they don't spell too good.
You know, it's interesting is social engineering is still the number one way to hack a computer system. It's not to, you know, like, for example, we love these hacker movies where a guy sits down and there's like 7 screens in front of him and there's all this like whirling code and there's that great montage music and then he like cracks and he's like, I'm in. That's never it. I mean, like 99% of the time, it is a USB drive that some hacker has dropped in the parking lot, you know, 20 of them, hoping that employee picks it up, sticks it in their computer, and it calls back home. And now he has, or she has, whoever the hacker may be, has access to your private corporate network.
Yeah.
That's the, or, it's funny, I can't say the name of the company, but there was a company that had such a hostile relationship between the executive team and the tech support team that basically when the tech support team, whenever they interface with them, they were afraid of the executive team. Like the executive team would call down, they'd be like, just screaming at them, be like, you need to reset our passwords and this is dumb. And so a hacker realized this dynamic and would get the tech team to reset passwords and to issue new devices and security keys by calling and yelling at the tech support team. And it was interesting. It was like their biggest corporate problem, their biggest corporate security issue was that their executive team were assholes, right?
Right.
And that's the funny part, right? It's like there's no 7 computer screens and viruses being written. It's that the cybersecurity team had to advise the executives not to be as big of an asshole as they were, and they need to like change their relationship with tech support, and so that tech support knows that just because someone's calling and yelling at them doesn't mean they need to listen, right? So it's pretty fascinating that the humans are actually the weakness in a computer system.
Yeah, and that's the truth.
Interesting.
That's the truth.
Very interesting.
That is so true. Very, very true. Wow. Okay, one more thing. The Sino-American trading relationship. Did I say that right?
Yeah. Oh, that's just, people talk about our relationship with China and what that looks like. And, maybe a fun topic for some podcasts or yours, but basically it's around, any questions that you think your listeners may have around, what does it mean to be in a trade war with China? What does it mean that their technology is so advanced? That kind of thing.
Oh, okay. Just want to know because you have so many goodies here. I was like, wow, this has been really, really enlightening, educational to say the least. It has just been, whew.
I've had a great time. It's great talking to both of you.
Thank you. It was great talking to you. And we definitely going to have to come back again and get deep into some of these areas. I know we spent some time on the artificial intelligence, a little bit on the blockchain, but we definitely need to stay in touch because this is a topic that a lot of people don't get to talk about unless you're in that circle.
Right. Well, I would love to come back and talk, especially if you get any questions from your listeners about AI or machine learning or anything we just mentioned. If you just want to jot them down, we could do a follow-up, and I'd love to dive deep on wherever anyone is interested.
Okay. I'm very interested.
Very fun.
I was like fluid. And it's so funny that you brought up TikTok because that's where it happened with the Tom Cruise thing.
It's true.
TikTok.
Yeah.
That's exactly where it happened. I mean, he was in the kitchen cooking and had every Tom Cruise expression, I wouldn't have known it wasn't Tom Cruise. I would have not known.
It's an absolutely fascinating problem. It's an awesome thing to watch, and it's a fascinating problem to solve.
Yes, it is. Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. Wow, Luke, thank you so much. We truly, truly appreciate you. And we are definitely going to have you again because this has been definitely over the top and very different for some of the topics that we talk about. And we love different.
That sounds great to me. Just let me know when.
Okay, so one more time, how do people get in touch with you before we wrap up?
Yeah, you could look me up on LinkedIn, or you can just hit me up on my website, Arricor.com.
Thank you for tuning in to Just Minding My Business Radio. I'm your host, Ida Crawford.
And I'm your co-host, Ruth Haskins.
We hope you enjoyed the show and appreciate you stopping by. Many blessings to you and yours.